Okay, Korn, Ferry International. Just hang on, Digby. Okay, I know you're champing at the bit here.
Fluffy.
Fluffy, okay. Korn Ferry International has posted a loss in the fiscal first quarter due to weak labour markets and a restructuring charge. The staffing company said demand for its services began to stabilise in the quarter, but the economy and labour markets remain uncertain. Gary Burnison is the CEO of the business. He's joined us round the desk. Good morning, Gary. Good to see you. Well, just give us your line on what you think is going to happen here, given that you're pretty close to the executive search and job market.
Well, I think there's a sense of economic normalcy. Flat is the old up. But I kind of look at the next few quarters and see the Nike swoosh. It's hard to see a V or a W necessarily. I think it's kind of a long haul out of this. And the key, in my mind, is the banking system. That's clearly one, because credit is still very, very tight.
Do you think that the Pittsburgh meeting should come up with some resolution that requires the banks to increase lending into the real economy, and how would you imagine that they could go about that? How would it work for you as a CEO if that were to happen?
Well, first of all, I mean, the capital basis of the banks have to be bolstered. So the toxic assets that they have to come off those balance sheets. And in the United States, for example, 90% of all jobs is created by small companies that employ 30 people or less. That's the economy.
We know that the banks are not lending. It keeps coming up in every bit of data we get from the authorities that monitor these things. The banks turn around legitimately and say, why do I lend into an economy that's not going to show dramatic recovery? All well and good, we may be out of the woods, but we still don't believe that companies are going to see strong enough demand going forward that we should give them new money.
Well, the spigots were just turned off, right? I mean, the excesses of the last several years were such that, they just turned off the spigot, right? Just got shut off overnight.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take time for credit to come back into the markets, because they will have that belief, that borrowers are not going to be able to repay their debt.
With these kind of levels of unemployment that we're seeing globally, in fact, how much long-term risk is there to the labour force that we're just going to find skills draining away that aren't going to come back because it takes so long for labour markets to recover? Well,
there's certainly some danger of that. I mean, there's disintermediation. I mean, look at the media business today. But I think, longer term, the demographic trends are pretty powerful. But there's kind of two labor pools. There are those that have skills, those that have education, and then those that do not. And those that do not are left behind.
One thing that worries me is that the quantitative easing policies are basically legislating profits for the banks. And so people are staying in the banking system who really would be better off for all of us if they went into the real economy. And for a period of time, a bunch of the banking folks decided there's no future here and I'm going to go into a different part of the economy. Are you seeing any transfer of those skill sets into real economy businesses? Are you seeing senior skilled people say, I'm going to take a risk in a new field of enterprise?
Well, I think financial services is a real economy. And what we've actually seen over the last several months is, financial services is typically first in and first out. And we've actually seen that over the last 12 to 14 weeks in our financial services business across the world. We're starting to see investment banks start to ramp up talent again.
They are. They're paying record bonuses again and 3-year guarantees already.
Can I ask you, I said fluffy when I heard about what Tim Geithner is going to announce today at the congressional hearing. And Gordon Brown has said what you just reported about what he's going to, talk about. Well, it's I want to work with kids and travel, isn't it? I mean, all these politicians, from Merkel through Sarkozy to Brown and Obama, they're all saying the same stuff. We're going to have loads and loads and loads of multinational, international initiatives to really sort this out forever. By the way, vote for me. Whereas at the end of the day, it's going to come down to wealth creation in the private sector to sort this out at the end of the day. Now, do you find that people at the moment, either in a job, have got the courage to say, I'd rather be in another job? Or are you finding that people are still saying, I'm going to hang on where I am. I'm not going to make the move. And therefore, if the private sector is going to sort this out eventually, at the moment, the private sector isn't going to sort it out because no one's going to
take a risk.
Jump into the deep end first.
Well, people are starting to raise their heads, right? If you'd asked me 14 weeks ago, I'd have said absolutely not. Nobody's going to take a risk. But over the last 3 to 4 months, we've started people, you get used to things, right? You become immune. The fall off was so steep a year ago when the equity markets cratered and credit evaporated that, you know, all CEOs were trying to do was hoard cash. I mean, we were hoarding cash, right? Cash became not just king, but it became God, right? Yeah. And so there was such an inward focus in terms of running a global business. So I think now job seekers, yeah, they're starting to raise their heads.
The thing is, Gary, Korn Ferry did not give guidance on earnings in this last set of quarterly numbers and said at this point, and I quote, but you'll know this better than I, making a meaningful prediction about earnings remains impractical at this stage. So even if you are seeing these areas of recovery, it seems like you don't have a whole lot of confidence that this recovery is going to be sustainable.
Well, look, you know, 2 months, 3 months doesn't make a trend, right? And for me, it's going to be interesting to see how we finish out this year and then how the next calendar year starts. I mean, certainly there's some encouraging news. The business was up sequentially for the first time in a year. That's good news. There's green sprouts, but we need water and sunshine. I mean, we need job creation. We need consumers to come back and spend.
I didn't know I was on Gardener's World. Are you finding a difference one side of the Atlantic from the other? And then secondly, are you finding a difference in Germany and France to Britain?
Not really, not at the executive level. As you go further down, certainly there's some differences, but at the C-suite level, not really.
Good to have you in this morning. Thanks very much for coming and taking our questions.
Thank you.
Gary Burnison, the CEO of Korn Ferry. Okay, the election race in Germany is heating up with just 4 days